Thanks for joining us.
Oh, glad to be here.
Awesome. Well, I thought we'd just jump in with you and get your take on it, kind of start out from maybe the real estate point of view as far as affordable housing in the Valley. And then if you can just tell us a little bit about yourself, I figured we'd let you do your own intro, and then you've got about 8 minutes and we'll hold our questions till the end.
Okay, great. Well, good morning, everybody. Thanks for coming this bright and early pretty day. My name is Wirtala, and I am the Public Affairs Director for the Realtor Association. So anybody that decides to become a realtor, and right now we have about 1,065 of them, have to join the Realtor Association, join the clubhouse. So I work at the clubhouse and I represent realtors every day. And, you know, their industry is tied to a lot of policies and legislation that impacts their way of doing business. So I'm their spokesperson. And because of that, we're pretty tied into data. And we are always, you know, watching housing prices. And then we have a lot of just, you know, anecdotal stuff. So despite some of the wild rumors that happened during the pandemic, we did not increase by 40,000 people. It may have seemed like that when you were trying to drive down West Reserve, but we didn't. We don't have hard statistics yet because the census data hasn't come out, and that really is the best way to get concrete data. But you know, the best that we can figure is that this valley grew by 14%, give or take a little bit of that. So that probably seems low, but I think that's a pretty realistic number to work with. And not everybody came from California. There were people from all over the United States. There was a statistic that I saw that 23 million people moved. And whether they moved, you know, here to Kalispell, Montana, or other places, but people were definitely on the move, and mostly because they could. This has brought about the work from home ability, and people just decided that they don't have to come to a concrete office every day, that sometimes they actually work more productively and get more stuff done during the day, sitting at their kitchen table or in their home office. So they were definitely shifting around, a lot of migration out of cities into rural areas. And actually a lot of rural areas promoted that. They would, there was a place in Oklahoma and another one in Iowa that actually paid for people to come to their town. They'd pay $10,000 worth of moving costs. So Kalispell did not do that, and we still got people to come. And so our realtors were pretty darn happy. They sold a lot of housing. And when I first started the job in 2007-ish, there was actually a glut of housing in the market. We were just, you know, going into our recession, and even coming out of the big recession, there were literally hundreds of homes and lots for sale that people were really scratching their heads like, what are we going to do with all of this? Well, you know, in just 7 years, that has really turned around to, we just don't have much inventory. And so, you know, it's always that supply curve going up and the demand curve going up, and you know, that makes prices go up. So, or the supply is going down and demand's going up. Sorry, didn't do that well in econ. So anyways, we just have a shortage of available housing stock, which is what my realtors tell me every day. So prices are just astronomical. I did a little bit of research on our website yesterday. And so right now in the county, for all of Flathead County, and this takes into account our 3 big municipalities, the median sales price is about $425,000, which is astounding. Amazingly enough, I find this statistic really incredible. Columbia Falls median price is beating out Kalispell's median price by quite a bit. A home now in Kalispell is $463, and a
Wow.
home in Kalispell is $338. So that just goes to show where Columbia Falls used to be kind of known as the affordable place to live.
Mhm.
It is now like the hip hopping into place for people to go to.
Wow.
You know, lots of new fun stuff going on there. People like being that close to the park. You know, it's easy to commute to other places, but there's a lot of new development going on in Columbia Falls. So people are really taking a close look at that and enjoying the heck out of it. Whitefish, of course, is always an expensive place to live, and they are working on that. They're trying to come up with some affordable housing options, but it's still just a tough place. Kalispell is doing a good job by just really working hard to provide a lot of product, and so they have approved a tremendous number of new housing projects going on. Of course, there's always some lag time in getting those up and going. You know, they've got 3 or 4 years to get sewer in the ground and pavement and things going, but I think Kalispell's working pretty hard at trying to solve some of these problems. So, and they've been creative with their zoning and things like that. So, let's see. I had a question just come in, and what? So, what are some of the realistic affordable housing options coming out of Helena? Yes, currently affordable housing does not exist. So, I guess what I would like to address is the difference between affordable housing and workforce housing. So, you know, you've got very low income people, like say you're homeless or you're living in your car. Even affordable housing is probably out of your reach, and you're going to need a hand up and maybe get into some subsidized housing, or they call it Section 8 housing. And there are those options available, of course, long waiting lists and you know, difficult to get into. They're working hard to do that. House Bill 21 is currently moving its way through the Senate right now. It did finally pass the House, and that would allow people that build that Section 8 housing to the ability to loan $15 million more than they can already loan from the coal tax state housing fund. And this has been a pretty successful program. Currently, it has $15 million in it available to be loaned to developers of this type of housing. And it would add an extra 15 million to that kitty, because really, when you're talking housing developments, 15 million is kind of a pittance. It doesn't go very far. They have been successful just in the last 2 years using that original 15 million to create 8 different housing units all over, mostly rural Montana. A couple went up in like Havre, one in Joliet, I think. They were kind of spread out, not surprisingly, in the bigger metropolitan areas, but across the High Line in the central part of the state. So really trying to address very low income housing all across, where, you know, you don't typically think of it. So workforce housing is more people that are of the average median income. You know, they might be collectively pulling in anywhere from 70 to 150,000 and still are priced out of these markets. Typically, you should spend just 30% of your take-home pay on your housing, on your mortgage, and that is fast becoming an unreality, I guess, is how you would say. So there's some options available, but I would not say that those are Helena options right now.
Okay.
So
Great. Well, thank you so much, Erica. We appreciate it. And, you know, if you guys have any other questions for Erica or any of the panelists, feel free to just throw them in the chat. We'll answer them as we can or towards the end. We're going to move on now to Alan Ream with Flathead Building Association. Thanks, Alan, for being here. And same question goes to you. Why do you feel housing prices are rapidly rising in the Flathead Valley? And looking forward to kind of having more of a builder's perspective on this.
Okay, thanks Thanks for that introduction. And I'd like to say good morning, and I'm honored to be here this morning. I am the owner of Montana Heritage Home Builders. We're a home building company here in the Flathead Valley. We've been building houses here for 25 years, so been here a long time. I'm also past president for the Flathead Building Association, and I'm currently the vice president for the Montana Building Industry Association. So what I want to talk about today is three of the top concerns that we have on a home building perspective, and those are rising material prices, availability of materials, and labor shortages. I'm going to start with the lumber prices. So lumber prices have skyrocketed 180% since last April. 180%. That's pretty incredible. This price spike has caused the price of an average new single family home to increase by $24,000. So that's $24,000 just in our lumber prices. That doesn't take into account any of the other material prices that have also gone up.
Mhm.
What does this mean for Montana? In regards to home affordability, for every $1,000 price increase, 655 people in Montana are priced out of home ownership. Just the increase in lumber prices alone have priced out 16,000 people in 1 year.
Wow.
16,000 Montanans in 1 year just from lumber price increases. This does not take into account all the other materials that have gone up to a lesser degree than lumber. So that's one of our big concerns. So next is availability of materials. With the COVID restrictions on areas of the country that manufacture construction materials and increased levels of construction nationwide, we are experiencing delays in receiving some items such as appliances, windows, plumbing fixtures, the list goes on.
Mhm.
This increase in time is causing longer construction schedules, which in turn raises the price of the home. Another item we're facing is skilled labor shortages. We're also experiencing a shortage in the construction workforce. The number of skilled trade contractors and young people entering the construction industry is dwindling, and it has been for several years now. In turn, the prices the trade contractors charge is increasing, adding to the cost of new homes. So that's in today's market, skyrocketing lumber prices, a limited supply of land, a shortage of skilled labor and materials, and rising fees are all contributing to higher prices. Couple of the less tangible factors that are increasing prices are community perception, expectations, and demands also play an important role in determining the availability and cost of housing.
Lots of factors.
Yeah, it's a lot of factors right now, and it's kind of a tough building climate at the moment. Prices are really our costs are going up immensely. So there's a little bit of a light at the end of the tunnel. So what's being done to change the high lumber prices, material shortages. So the National Association of Home Builders is working with the President Biden's administration to urge lumber producers to ramp up production to ease growing shortages, and also making it a priority to work with Canada on a new softwood lumber agreement to reduce the tariffs. So we currently have with Canada, there's currently about a 20% lumber tariff, and we're trying to eliminate that, or at least reduce that, which naturally in turn will bring the prices of materials down. Other efforts on the labor shortage are efforts to educate young people that the construction industry is a viable career choice that can provide them with skills and a rewarding future that will support them and their families financially, are underway with programs such as the Columbia Falls High School Building Trades Program and the Kaliswell High School Student Built House Program. And there's several other programs throughout the state that are working on that and trying to train the next generation of builders out there, and having some really good success with those programs.
Yeah, that's good. But unfortunately, it's not going to happen right now, right? They're still in high school or just coming off of high school, and it's going to take a little while to kind of move that workforce to where we need them
Yep.
to be. So
Yeah, it's a slow process, and it's something that we really need school guidance counselors to also promote home building or construction or the trades programs as a really a good career that can give you a financially stable career. So it's an ongoing process, and it's something we're definitely working on.
yeah, definitely. And I mean, even just you had mentioned lumber prices, but I know, for instance, OSB, which is used frequently in homes, didn't that double in price this year? Something as simple as just that one item.
Yeah, it more than doubled. It was
Wow.
a year ago, it was about $11 a sheet, and it's
Mhm.
$25 a sheet now. So
Gosh,
it's it's a little more than
that's
double. But
crazy.
one of the guys that works for me a couple of days ago was in Home Depot and sent me a picture of 7/16 OSB. It was $38 a sheet.
Oh
So
my
that
gosh.
we don't pay that high a price, but that's pretty nuts. That's for sure.
Yeah, definitely. Well, thank you so much for your take.
Yeah.
I appreciate it. And it's, we're going to get a couple different points of view, but definitely from kind of the building aspect of it, there's a lot more elements that go into just putting a house on a lot.
Yeah,
You're looking at labor costs and you're looking at insurance costs for that matter too, are obviously going up year by year as well. And material, it's challenge, definitely.
yeah. So there's there's another item I'd like to talk to about, and that's it's been on the news a little bit, and as a viable source to affordable housing
Mhm.
is accessory dwelling units. So an accessory dwelling unit is basically a house in your backyard, and it's actually a pretty viable solution to affordable housing. You can if you can put a unit in your backyard, you can rent it out to someone. You can have your kids can live there. It's a fully what accessory dwelling unit is. It's a fully functional small home that can fit in somebody's backyard that provides another house. Another way of doing that is apartment over top of in a garage, or an apartment in a basement. And those are that's definitely a worthwhile item to look at for affordable
Mhm.
housing. It doesn't affect the infrastructure to a great degree, and it doesn't cause some real major density issues by any means. There's even Seattle is even doing accessory dwelling units that they are selling. So they have the zoning in place that they can actually sell a house that's in their backyard. So they're
Wow.
doing that in Seattle to try to address the extremely high costs in Seattle for housing there.
My gosh, crazy. Well, I mean, I think at some point we're going to have to start literally thinking outside the box, because apartments aren't going to go up overnight. Affordable housing isn't going to change overnight. So I don't know. We'll have to see if that's the way we want to go. But that's an interesting point of view for sure. And we'll have to see how that goes for Seattle first.
Yeah.
So I did have a question from Clint. He said, it appears that community housing, whether work first, Section 8, or otherwise, is prevalent. Overall, he feels the mindset in the Valley is against it in general. Whitefish Chamber did an entire affordable housing study over a year and went nowhere. What can we do to address the feelings our city and government officials give off of not seeing the need for affordable housing in the Valley?
Can I
This might
jump
be,
in on that?
yeah, go ahead. Yep.
Okay, so it was a couple of years ago that Whitefish did their they first had an affordable housing summit, and actually I would say it was workforce housing. People that really worked hard to address the problem, and they had business owners that were having to close because they couldn't get employees there. So they recognize that it is a problem, and they are trying to address it in different ways. So they did the big study, and they found out right there in black and white that they are critically short of any of workforce housing units, probably by about 900 units to start off the bat. They were short. Then they did a second follow-up study with strategies to try and address how they might get more affordable housing. And you're not just going to do it in one methodology is not going to solve the problem. They're going to have to do a bit here and a bit here, and try and chip away at that number from a variety of angles. So one of the things that came out, and I know this is not going to sit well with Alan, but one of the strategies was that they would make an ask, or that really wasn't an ask, it was a you have to, on developers to give 20% of their product had to be sold at a reduced market rate, so that teachers and firefighters and nurses or whatever could afford to buy in. So if you had a 10-lot subdivision in Whitefish, 2 of those units would have to be sold anywhere from 80% AMI to 120%. So it was still, you were still looking at probably a $287 unit house. So they're not cheap housing, but definitely the developers were paying a penalty, and it was hard on them. And everybody recognizes that. It's called inclusionary zoning. But in Whitefish and in Bozeman, those are the 2 places across the state that have these types of programs, and both of their programs are very different. From what I can tell from the planning staff, it does seem to be working slowly. It's been in place for about a year. They've got $1 million for in money, cash, because somebody paid cash, and then they I think have 4 houses in the program. So after a year of being up and running, they do have some product to show for it and some cash in the bank that they can build something as they get along. It also offered the development of what they call the snow lot, and that is underway with, I think, 24 units, things like that. So Whitefish is now working on their ADU, accessory dwelling unit policies. They had a work session last Monday night. Kalispell denied their ADU proposals, but that is just going back to the drawing board. I had a long talk with the mayor, and he's like, it wasn't very well defined or flushed out. There were a few hiccups in that. I think they fully intend to adopt an ADU program in Kalispell. It just needed to kind of start over again and be flushed out a little bit better. So Kalispell's working on it as well.
Okay, Alan?
Yep. So I'm gonna talk about inclusionary zoning. So inclusionary zoning does not work. So the reason I say that is, so what it does, it just what Erica said, the developer has to provide a certain number of lots in his development or his subdivision for the affordable housing program. So what that means is he has to sell those homes. When those homes are built, those homes have to be sold at a loss. So what happens in reality with those projects is all the other lots or all the other houses in that subdivision, the prices are raised in order to pay for the houses that were sold at a loss. So by doing that, the only thing it's resulting in is the housing prices to go up and the middle class to get priced out of housing. So that's one of the big problems with inclusionary zoning. Another problem with inclusionary zoning is when somebody gets one of those homes, they are locked into a mortgage where they can never sell that house for more than a certain amount of profit. So that basically the house has to stay in the program. So it has to be sold to somebody else that qualifies for the program, meets the income guidelines. That's who they can sell their house to. And what that results in is the market goes up, everybody gets a nice profit on their homes, except for those people that are in that program. They do not get that larger profit from their home because of being in that program. So that makes it very restrictive on home ownership. One of one of the big key factors of home ownership is the ability to someday sell your home at a fair market value, and that locks those people out of being able to do that. So that's a couple of the big problems with inclusionary zoning. Another problem with it is it solely puts the burden on the developer. So it's not a community effort. It's not the entire community paying for it. It's the developer only paying for it. So what we need is programs that are a joint partnership between government and private, and not a full burden on one or the other.
Mm-hmm. Great. Well, thank you both for your points of view. I think I learned a little bit more today about inclusionary zoning that I didn't know. I think it's a good time now to segue over to Jarod with the City of Kalispell. Hey, Jarod, how's it going?
I'm doing well. How are you?
I'm good.
Already touched on everything. I don't even need to say anything. Eric even knows what's going on with the city. So yeah, the ADU, it's more, you got to realize we're still in a pandemic as well. And planning efforts are not just about trying to shove things down communities' throats as well. We try and do planning efforts. And when you're doing an accessory dwelling unit that's going to affect a good chunk of the city, and we don't even have the ability for the public to come in and say, yeah, we like it or we don't, it's like, yeah, we're in a housing crunch here, but the reality is accessory dwelling units aren't going to move the needle, especially if we wait a couple months to where we could involve the public and get it right. So certainly we'll be moving forward with something. It's just, something we felt like didn't need to be pushed through as fast as it was moving, given, there's actually been some interesting legislation coming out of the state based off of what a lot of communities have done during this pandemic, and actually, potentially prohibiting, say, subdivisions and all these things that we've done this last year, just because there hasn't been enough community input. And so that's kind of why we've stepped back, because like I said, we are in a pandemic and planning is a community effort. So just stay tuned. You'll see something here probably the next year or so. But yeah, housing costs, there's no panacea. There's so many factors that play into it, as Alan had stated, just the lumber costs alone. And you can imagine how the lumber costs have affected multifamily developments. I mean, just think about how much lumber goes into a multifamily project than, say, a single family home. So, it's just this kind of cycle of things. And then how's that affect the rent? The rent just went from $1,000 to $1,200 or $1,000 to $1,300 just based off of, lumber costs alone, and then the labor and shortage of labor. So it's a struggle for developers to make these projects pencil. Ironically, it's getting to the point where they can only pencil because rents are so high, with construction costs and materials and labor costs and impact fees and road and water and sewer. And, it's one thing to, complain about affordable housing, but then we also have another group over here that says, well, the roads aren't adequate. It's like, well, all that cost gets put on the developer, the roads, and it's not just the building you see going up. So there's so many costs that go into it. I've talked to developers that pretty much say the only way they can make it pencil is if they build it cash, because that's part of the whole thing as well. You got realtors involved, you got commercial bankers involved, you got so many different people with their fingers in the pot that all add a little bit of cost to it. And we, the city, we add costs because we have development standards, and we require stormwater, curbs, gutter, landscape boulevard, street trees, actual road improvements that move people, bike paths, trails, all these things people want cost money. And, it all kind of trickles and has an impact, but it also is what builds your community. So, like I said, you can't put it all on one person, a developer. You got to have these partnerships to make it pencil. Yeah. But there's certainly just trends, in the planning world. The last probably 25, 30 years, there's been a big urban push. And, I think the pandemic has just shifted that. All of a sudden, the urban areas were hit the hardest by the pandemic. And so they're they're moving, right? And it's not just, like Erica said, they're moving to the rural areas, but even in California, the suburban areas are seeing a huge price increase as well, even though they're already high. People are leaving the more dense areas for the suburban areas, not just because of the pandemic, the schools, the riots, all these things have had an impact. There's just so many things happening. The suburbs tend to actually be in school. The urban areas aren't in school. So parents are trying to get their kids in school. There's so many things that are having an impact on this. And I always remind people too, that if you're from California, you're probably not originally from California. It had some pretty great migrations as well. It was a point where, a lot of people are just, we got a lot of baby boomers, and a lot of baby boomers are retiring. So that impacts it. And they have cash because maybe they moved from Wyoming to California and they bought a house for $150,000 and now it's worth $800,000 and they could come here. I mean, we're seeing cash offers, right?
Yeah.
So all of a sudden the market almost doesn't matter to them. They'll overpay and they'll just pay for it cash. So there's that. The financing now, I mean, you can get a house for near 2%. So people's buying power is more, whether you're buying cash or not. So, even though the house is 300,000, really, you have same buying power as somebody that maybe was paying 200,000 in a house a decade ago with the interest rates alone. So there's just so many things that factor into it. I think an important distinction, as Erica touched on, is just what is the affordability discussion, whether it's workforce housing or just your starter home, or if it's truly affordable, say for, 50% the median income, or if you're homeless. Because like I said, if you're homeless, having been part of the task force and seen a lot of the numbers, and you're disabled and you don't work, and it doesn't matter how affordable it is, you don't have an income, so you can't afford anything. So you need subsidized housing, which gets into, we probably need more Section 8 vouchers, and we need more subsidized housing. And then that comes into the community of, we got to be willing to accept those developments and where they go and where we place these people, because regardless, they're here. And so yeah, there's so much that goes into it. Supply and demand certainly is a huge thing right now. And despite the city planning, we've known people were coming. We had something similar to this in 2006 and 2007, and the city's planned for the growth, but it still is developer driven, and they can't put it up overnight, which, in one sense is a good thing, because there could be a lot of change happen really, really, really fast. You look at some of these places that are building 10,000 homes in a couple of years, and I don't think people want to see that. So it's kind of, it's there, but we've definitely planned for it. We've got a lot of housing stock planned, and it's varying. It's not just, say, your big house. We've got a lot of small houses, a lot of townhouses, and a lot of mixed use developments. So there'll be a lot of options for people.
Great. Well, we had a couple of questions come in for you. So I'll start with this one. This is from Mitch McKinley. Jarod, can you speak to the land trust model and how the city of Kaliswell has worked on bringing this to our area?
I sure can, Mitch, and Mitch could probably do it better than me. But the land trust model, I think, is an excellent option as far as versus inclusionary zoning or something. I feel like there could be much better partnerships. I guess I'd add my one point about inclusionary zoning. It's not just that home ownership part, but even if it's an apartment building that's got an inclusionary component on it, if you got, a building, a developer, whoever, has a certain profit they have to make, and it's maybe not just because of them, it's because they've got a loan from the bank and they've got that. I mean, there's, like I said, there's so many people that are intertwined with it, but basically what you do is, yes, you may be able to say lower the rent for, say there's 10 people in the building and 2 of them are low income, so you lower the rent for those 2. All you did is make it more expensive for the other 8. And those other 8 are also low income. So you're actually penalizing the people you're trying to help,
Right.
It's not like you're not taxing the rich, I should say. You're pretty much, you made the other people pay 1,200, and then these ones are paying 800. So, and regardless, it's somebody that's trying to struggle their workforce, and they're trying to get their first house, and all you did was provide and give them an extra barrier that disproportionately is affecting them. You're helping 2 but hurting 8. So that's kind of the issue I have with inclusionary zoning. From a planning standpoint, certainly has worked in some areas. If you just look at it from a straight number perspective of saying, well, we helped 2 people. Yeah, but what were the unintended consequences of that, right? So like you hurt 8. But the land trust model is a great example. And it was during the crash. We had a lot of houses that had gone into foreclosure through the what was it? The stimulus back under the Obama administration. The city of Kalispell got $4 million. This is very high in the sky kind of explanation, but we bought houses, and we own 50 houses through the land trust. So with the city and the land trust, a nonprofit, a partnership, went out and bought 50 houses, and the land is owned by the land trust, and the house is owned by the person or individual that buys the home. And since the land trust owns the property, it just permanently can keep the price down. Meanwhile, if somebody buys the house, they still get, if the market goes up, they get a percentage of the market increase. Plus, they also get any money they put into the house, so they can build equity in it. And it's really a permanently affordable program. You could kind of think of it in a weird way, like a mobile home park, in a sense, where you just pay a small lease fee to the land trust, and then you have the house on it. But it doesn't affect, then you have pride in ownership. It doesn't hurt the market value of the area, because you still have an appraisal on the house, of the land in the house, even though then, since the land trust owns it, we pretty much could take the land cost out of any house. So really building on that program would be a great option. But certainly it's not always easy to just have $4 million to start with.
Yeah.
But working with developers and finding ways to incorporate developments or programs like that, and I sit here and think of, the student built housing. It's like, oh, if you could get land in the land trust, and you could have student built housing, built the house, and then you have it owned by the land trust. And, maybe we work with developers and give them some breaks on parklands or something like this, so that, they don't have a net loss in their development, that you could make something work. And then most importantly, they're permanently affordable, and they're an actual house and an actual development. And so certainly look it up. The Community Land Trust is a great model.
Great, thank you. So one other question to you as well. Can you give us just a brief update on what's going on with the Kaliswell core area and Meridian Court?
Yeah, so the core area's got a lot going on. The tracks will be coming out this year, and the trail is going to be going in this year. So there's a multifamily project on Meridian Court going in. I believe it's 140 units, and it's the same developer that did the project in Columbia Falls. I believe it's called the Highline. A very dense project. It'll be right there on the trail, pretty much right adjacent to our downtown. Really excited, and that development will provide a lot of housing options as well. Studios, 2 bedrooms, 3 bedrooms. Historically, we've been kind of a bedroom community, and it's pretty much just been single family homes. But we're seeing a lot of different mixtures of housing, and certainly a lot to come. We've had a lot of meetings with developers along the core area, and you're going to see a lot here the next year or two. Certainly it's an exciting time. The trail will be done. Hopefully by this time next year, we'll be riding on it, and you'll be seeing some new housing going up.
Exciting. Awesome. Well, thank you. I'm kind of reading through the chat here. Does anyone have another question? I mean, you're welcome to unmute yourself and ask it or type it in the chat, whatever's
I
easy.
guess I'd like to address one of the questions that came in the chat about time
Sure.
is of the essence. And, you know, to developers and realtors to a certain extent, time is money. I mean, that's to every profession, is time is money. And so we don't typically find the problem of a lot of government regulation in our area here, but I know down in Missoula, a subdivision development proposal can be reviewed and reviewed and reviewed. Those typical times are taking a year and a half, sometimes up to 2 years to get a subdivision just approved before the developer can even break ground. And so I know that the Kalispell and the Whitefish and the Columbia Falls City Councils worked pretty hard to process those applications in a pretty quick manner, but in other municipalities, it's not quite the same. So to go back to the question about what we're doing about that in Helena's, the realtors have a bill asking for expedited subdivision review where there is a growth policy, where there's public infrastructure already in place, and where there's zoning already in place. So
yeah,
that might help, maybe not specifically in this area, but in other areas where development is just moving along, the process is moving just along at a snail's pace. And maybe that'll help, you know, release some of the pressures too.
Yeah, definitely. Great. All right. Anyone else out there?
A question.
Sure. Go ahead, Krista.
So working in real estate, just recently we're getting more and more into property management. And we do have a property that does have some HUD units. And we're finding that we want to be inclusive of everybody. If the money comes in and there's somebody supporting, you know, paying the rent, that's great. But we're finding when we look at these units or when people are moving out, there's significant damage to the property, like filth, holes in the walls, the cost of it and the time to repair everything, which means it's not being rented out at the moment, you know, and so there's this gap in somebody living there, there's labor costs, there's, you know, extra costs for repairing all these items. You know, what incentivizes a property owner to want to accept these sort of tenants if we know that the damage is going to be so significant that it doesn't really make sense financially?
I know. You know, I've never understood why people feel like they can vandalize somebody else's property. I'm on the board of the Community Land Trust along with Mitch McKinley and Jarod, and you know, the number of homes that get vandalized as they leave there and move on. You know, here we've provided them a great affordable house and then they decide to destroy it. And yeah, so those costs have to be absorbed. And I just, I feel badly because like I just said, time is money. And so if you can't turn that around to a new renter in a timely fashion, you're really losing out.
And it's making it unsafe. Like they're doing things that are like burning up the outlets, which means the whole unit could burn down and like things like this. And it's like, you don't know it until they move out and you see it and you go inside, but you know, you want to nip it in the bud early on, but if they're hiding it and, you know, it's just, it makes it dangerous for everybody. So we're just trying to figure out, and a lot of these folks do have either mental issues or potentially some disabilities. And so we're seeing that it's trickling through the other tenants in the units, and it's making it a place where people don't want to live. And so it basically brings down the morale in the community or in the units. Yeah. Anyway, just something that, like, I don't know how that could be addressed, but, you know, I can see why a lot of property owners don't, you know, they raise their rents to kind of push people out who, you know, kind of historically, you know, do damage to the property. So
yeah, and I do think that when you have to pay first month, last month, and a security deposit and a pet deposit, that in itself can be a barrier to getting into housing. You know, that's a tough one when you have to have a couple $1,000s up front before you're even in. That can turn a lot of people away. They just don't have those resources.
Right.
Yeah.
Well, anyway, I just wanted to mention that. Thank you.
Yeah. Thanks, Krista. I appreciate it. Anybody else want to jump in with a question, comment, concern? We have about 10 minutes left. I see some chat discussion going on about property taxes. I don't know if we want to go there today, but I know mine are high, so I feel your pain. Yeah, definitely.
I just, I would remind people too, it's like in the United States, you're allowed to move wherever you want, right? You're not, we don't, in the United States, you can move freely wherever you want. And, I think, like I said, pricing's relative. To some people, 350,000 is absolutely affordable if you're coming from, Seattle or Portland or LA or San Francisco. So, they can come here and they don't have to be millionaires. You're a teacher in California or Seattle. I could just tell you, I got friends, a sheriff and teacher, and they were lucky to have bought a house, at say 250,000. Now it's worth 800,000.
Wow.
And they're going to come, they're going to get their pensions on their teacher and police salaries, so they'll probably be making, 150 to 200,000 just off their pensions when they retire, plus have a couple $100,000 cash.
Wow.
And they'll be able to come here and, they're not millionaires, but, it's just, there's so many things that you can't control, that if you start to try and control it by doing this method or that method, you're not going to accomplish anything, because there's just so many other factors that you can't control that, it's just kind of the world we live in. I always ask people, and it's kind of my own personal opinion, but I guess you have to ask yourself if you're entitled to live where you live. Like I'm not entitled to live in Beverly Hills. I'm not entitled to live in San Francisco. There's affordable places, and this is affordable to some people. And I think this is opportunity for a lot of areas, and especially rural areas right now that have seen such a decline over decades, that holy cow, this is like a rebirth for them. There's certainly areas that could use people and use reinvestment, cities like Detroit and all these places. I mean, it's super affordable and all over the US, the South. So this is actually an opportunity to kind of, I think, level the field a little bit. I think there's maybe been too much concentration of wealth in some of these other areas. But certainly you got to forget, Montana has basically been an exporter of their kids forever. And a lot of those kids, maybe some of those kids are the ones that are coming back. So it's not that they're not from here, they're just coming back because there's opportunity here. And with the growth, though, there's opportunity, and maybe my kids will actually be able to stay here and don't have to leave. So it's not all bad.
Yeah, definitely. Great. All right,
Well,
you guys.
If I may speak to the rest of Montana, being from Hingham, Montana, I'm a small town boy. My folks actually sold their place last year and relocated to Spokane. They got a whopping $60,000 for it. So if you're looking for affordable housing in Montana, Montana is a great place to live. They have a park, they have a bar, and a gas station. So pretty much you got all your needs met and you're ready to go. But yeah, and some of the talk, as far as property taxes go, I know that can be a sore point for a lot of people, but you have to remember we voted those into place. You look at why our property taxes raised. We built a new high school in 2007. We just built a new elementary 3 years ago that my kids get to go to. That's a wonderful facility. So when we think about why our property taxes are high, it's because we're improving our community. And when you look at moving outside of the city of Kalispell and the other cities and living in the county, and then go to their elementary schools and look at what the condition those facilities are in, and that's because they can't pass property taxes to fix those. Go to Kyla, look at their school. So just like Jared's saying, you pick where you live, and there is affordable housing out there, but you've got to understand you're getting what you pay for. So.
Let's see. Someone mentioned there should be a sales tax. Do any of you three or anyone else in the discussion want to jump on that? Or Mitch?
Or Mitch?
I could jump on that from a city's perspective. So I don't like the fact that we don't even have the option in the state of Montana to go to the voters to request it. Certainly we're you know, like Whitefish has it, and you look at all the infrastructure and things they could do, they could actually partially write down their property taxes. So I think we have so many visitors, and so why would we not tap into taking their money and then
Yeah.
doing infrastructure improvements for roads and things that then maybe
Mhm.
we could not have to put on a developer, so it could lower housing prices. But main thing is we could have better roads, better infrastructure, and probably cheaper property taxes if we had a sales tax. The worry always is it going to creep and creep and creep to where you're like California, it's 10% and all that. But, you know, it's constitutional that it can't be more than 4%. And regardless if it's voted in by the people in the city, what's the issue? I think the main concern is that the rural areas maybe aren't getting the benefit of the improvements, you know, but they have to come in and pay the property tax, you know, and I think I'd argue, well, they don't have to come into the city and they're driving on city roads and all that, so they probably should be paying property tax, you know, so that, but
Sales tax.
certainly I'm a supporter of a local option sales tax just because it would help with city infrastructure, because when you have 3 million visitors in the summer, it has huge impacts. And from a city's perspective, when you're the hub and you have so many people coming into the city every day and go back out to the county, it just has big impacts on our infrastructure, plowing and roads and things like that.
Yeah, definitely. I know that discussion's been brought up. We had our county commissioners for a forum, gosh, 2 or 3 years ago, and that was brought up at that time too. And it was interesting, at least from my perspective, it didn't seem like any of the ones that joined us thought it was a necessary thing to move forward quickly with proposing a potential sales tax. And now it seems like that has maybe changed a little bit as we're seeing this influx of visitors. And even over the last year, just with everything going on, I mean, that didn't slow anyone down from coming here. So I think it's definitely proven we're going to continue to see growth and more visitors, and we're definitely on the map per se as far as destination travelers. So I think it'd be a good idea. Anyone else? Mitch, I see you unmute.
Yeah, sorry. I just
Oh, you're good.
want to definitely caution people when it comes to sales tax. I do agree, you know, localized sales tax, maybe not a bad idea, like for the city of Kalispell. But if you're looking at countywide or even statewide, when you start implementing state taxes on your farmers, again, coming from a farming community, you're talking about, you know, purchasing a combine at, you know, $500,000, you put a 4% sales tax on that, that drives their cost up so much. And, you know, our ag industry is working on such small margins already. When you start cutting into that with sales tax, it's incredibly detrimental, especially for the, you know, the small family owned farms and businesses. It just kind of wipes them out. So, you know, if you can do it on a city level and really localized and leave those types of businesses outside of it, I don't have a problem with it, but you got to be really careful when you start talking about county sales tax and state sales tax. It would devastate Montana small business.
Okay, good perspective. I appreciate it. Well, I think we're going to go ahead and get this wrapped up. There's still some things going on in the chat if you guys want to jump in and answer questions that way. But as far as this session goes, it's almost 9 a.m. So I appreciate everyone that joined us today. Alan, Erica, Jarod, and everyone else that had some input. If you guys would like anyone's contact information, feel free to reach out. We'd be happy to provide it. And look forward to next month, April 14th, with Rob Rotowski from the airport talking about expansion and where we're flying next. So we will see you then. Enjoy this beautiful sunny day, and we'll talk to you soon. Take care.
Thanks, Carly.
Hey, thanks for hosting this.
Thanks,
Yeah,
guys.
bye, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.
Thanks a bunch. See ya.